Okay. So we're back, and so let me see if I see the poll here. I don't see the poll in my folder, so I think maybe perhaps I'll just go ahead. Okay, we'll go ahead. So again, welcome those of you that are here. But let me just share some statistics here that we do have about the real estate sector here. It is recorded that 43% of buyers start their home buying process by looking online. That by looking online, that's the first place that they go. That it's that it's more there than perhaps driving around, perhaps looking around. That it is there, and then 92% of buyers, what they're doing, how they're using that, and where they're doing that is on the internet. 50% of buyers, they use some form of a mobile website or an app to do their home search. And then 91% of realtors, they are using social media so that they can make their products be known, their inventory be known, so that they can interact with the buyers, so that they can make their work out there alive and going. So that's kind of the what we know about some quick stats about how this is utilized and so forth. And so I want to come in with the first question, and I want to pose this to everyone here. I just want to ask you a question. In your opinion, so this is just kind of a welcome discussion. In your opinion, how well do you think that the Kenyan market is, and you can say from the buyer, from the to the supply or from the demand side, how well adapted has the sector has the sector adapted to technology usage in the built environment? So this is just an opening question, just to get your sense of you're on the ground, you're interacting there. What's your sense? And maybe let me come to Alex first. Alex, what would you say? What's so if there's an adaptation on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, yes, they have jumped in wholeheartedly and have adapted, 1 being not at all. What would you say, Alex?
Well, thanks, Robin. I would place it at somewhere around 6, and taking a cue from interaction with technology in the other major sector you just mentioned, prop tech is just catching on to that party. Agri-tech is big, fintech is big, transport tech is big, health tech is big. But then this is where the magic is going to happen. So we are somewhere around 6, but then there will be a very aggressive steroids kind of growth that's going to be seen in the next 5 years, I think.
Okay. Well, great. Well, hopefully later in this discussion, you'll cue us into what that steroids injection is going to come from and what it might look like. Thank you, Alex. June, what would you say?
Thanks, Robin. So I'd say it's a bit lower than that. So we've seen a drastic uptake of technology in the built environment, especially over the last years you've mentioned, with COVID and everything. And it's unfortunate it took a worldwide pandemic to sort of spearhead some of these technological initiatives in the build sector. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement, especially when it comes to what you've mentioned from end-to-end sort of supply supplier to supplier and demand. You still see a lot of, what would I say, tendency towards remaining manual or still having to look for connections, even with funding stuff. Look at fact that it's still there. We still tend to see people trying to say, like I have to get somebody else. So we're still in sort of like, I can compare Fundi to sort of when Uber came into the market. People were still a bit very hesitant of, but I don't know this driver is an app. We're still there yet, but we are quickly evolving into somewhere where we're like, efficiency, we're looking for fast, we're looking for effective, and in the best way. And I think something like Fundi offers that. So I'd say we're a bit slow. What my previous colleague has mentioned, within the next 5 years, it's going to be a really high uptake track. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, June, for that. So what you said a little bit lower. What would you give it? What's the number?
I'd give it like between a 3 and a 4. just because I'm also coming from the construction sector and also coming from the real estate aspect. So an average.
Okay, great. All right, thank you for that. Okay, now George, what's your rating? What would you say?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. I agree with June in a way. I was actually thinking about a 4. Just for one main reason that yes, the knowledge is there, and people have the information, but the adoption is, I would say, poor in the sense that the interconnection is not there. So we are currently working in silos. So you would find even within the designers themselves, the architect is using one software, the engineer is working on a manual software, the mechanical engineer is working on a different software, and the contractor doesn't even bother with the software at all. So we have that disconnection. So the moment we will get good linkages, I think we would be talking above 5. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think that that lays the context for our discussion, right? That lays the context for our discussion, because then I would ask you, why would we talk about this if we're at a 3, 4, 5, right? So it begs the question of why would we even talk about this? Well, I think that there are so many reasons why this is important. Okay. So where we stand right now does not mean that the possibility of it and the future of a high technology integration is not worth fighting for, is not worth, continue to bring examples of it, this displaying the need for it, understanding, the different ways that we can do this. And I think back, if you will, to the conversation, with tea farmers and people that work in tea farms, and the concern about mechanization, right? The concern about what is this going to do? Is this going to take away jobs? Is this going to, take away, tacit knowledge? Is this going to take away hands-on skilling? And so I think that that's one of the things I'd like for us to, bring out and discuss here, especially, I think Alex, you might, people, if we bring in technology in the sector, what does that mean for me and my work and the work that I do? Well, and so I think the other thing I would like for us to come back and discuss, and George, come back to you and just go back around another round, if you will. So George, what is it going to take then? The point you just mentioned about that value chain and the people taking it up and seeing it as important to even start to incorporate and make those linkages. What's it going to take, George? You from someone who sits in such a major association, who's done such a wonderful job advocating for technology use and the approvals, right, and moving that to online. But what's it going to take, George, for the other linkages all across the board?
Thank you, Robin. Once again, I think people see the importance and they agree. If you sat down someone and you ask them if they wanted to take up technology, they definitely say yes. So the sad reality is that, one, there is the aspect of what I would call practical usage that people can use as benchmark. So for instance, what you mentioned about the automated approval, planning approval. The government has the resources to actually make sure that that particular system works perfectly. And recently, also the land conveyancing and the records is being converted into digital format. Also, the issue of registering land and actually property, just having a repository of property that we have, and that we can link it back all the way to Internet of Things, starting at that level of the properties and what they are offering. The challenges we have is that, one, there is the issue of the people always settling back to what they're comfortable with. So for instance, even within the design team, if we are working on a project and I get into a snag, what happens is that people, the first thing they think about is reverting to the manual. Nairobi County just the other day claimed that their system was hacked. Their online approval system was hacked. What did they do? They shut it down and asked us to take drawings there manually. I mean, if banks and these sensitive fintech institutions are using technology to do transactions, do we ever hear a bank has shut down because someone hacked the system and stole 200 million? We never hear that. But so for me, I think the issue is we need to take the bold step of that we will not be perfect when we start. We will have mistakes, but we can only make it better if we keep pushing. So I would say that if developers, the ones with the funds, or government, the ones with the power and the regulations, take this up and say, no matter what, we are going to move forward. And then it's insisted that, for instance, if you are going to have an approved drawings, you don't submit documents proving your ownership. If the government has that detail, all they have to do is just connect your approval and search in their database and confirm you are the owner, so that if we make mistakes, let us make it on the system, not outside the system. So that linkage will force people, even those who are outside, who are not thinking about that, to do it. Lastly, let me just mention a case of a couple of consultants. What they've done is that they've actually been forced. I know of a mechanical engineer who mentioned to me that he was forced to use BIM because he got a project by a consultant from, I think it was the United States. And that consultant, together with the developer, had said that any other consultant on this project must be able to use the BIM platform. Now, if you are going to be given a project where you're going to be paid millions of shillings, trust me, you will take your office to train BIM by force. So I think that is what we need to do for us to, what I would say, ubiquitous adoption of technology. Yeah, thank you, Robbie.
Wonderful. Thank you, George. I think even if we talk about another tech, right, like business registry. So this morning I was trying to finish. I've been told a company that I've had registered for years is not in the e-citizen platform. And so I've been told that exactly. So I've been told I need to now go and pay some I'm sure this is part of the thing, right? Pay somebody else to do some extra steps to get it into e-citizen. And that some companies were brought into e-citizen and some companies weren't. So, I think the whole thing, I think what we all have been dreaming or thinking or over-relying that technology was going to take out the human factor, right? We've been saying technology, if we just had technology, corruption would be solved. We would take out human factor, which is not the case. It still takes some humans in the back end and to do some clever stuff. I won't say any. This is a family-friendly show here, and so I just made me think about government's role in this, if you will. And then I was just as I come to you, June. Then who leads then, June? Is it the government to lead, or is it the private sector? That BIM, if you will, because the other thing is government is a large developer, isn't they're a large influencer on how things move and how things are being done. But we do find that they're perhaps a little bit lax on some of these innovations, not just technology, but ways of planning and designing and so forth. And so who can take that lead? Do we need more private sector developers, as George said, to put it in their tenders and so forth? What's your technology use? So that it's also in their rating scale, and then, government can do the same. But June, just from your point of view, who is the lead, who has the lead on this? Who can be making this more, the take-up to be greater? Where do you see that?
In my opinion, I think ideally it should be the government. Like you've mentioned, the government is the biggest client in any given economy. And I'd give an example with the UK, because that's where I did my studies on. The UK government is the one which pioneered BIM in the built environment, in the property. And it just put out an issue that all government issued tenders must have BIM. Now, the government having being the biggest project, it will force not only people who are contracted by private sector, but also anybody who's in the private developer who's partnered with the government, any government have any project. So that's sort of a holistic kind of approach, kind of covers everyone if you have government. But at some point you have to sit back and, not fully rely on the government and notice when they are falling back. And it also, encourage the private sector in our case, specifically in Kenya specifically, push the private sector, because that's, I'd say that's where a lot of technology initiatives have been coming from in Kenya. Even looking historically at other industries, culture, health, it's mostly being led by the private industry, and the government came in the sector. It's unfortunate, but if that's how it has to go, that's how it will go. But the reason why I think our Kenyan government is particularly slow on this is because there's a general lack of understanding as to what PIM or digital construction tech, prop tech is. So you hear a lot of people going about software, tech apps, it's about coding, it's about all of it. But there's not really an understanding as to why. Why are you doing that? What is the benefit? There's a lot of change management done, a lot of mind shift that needs to happen in terms of moving from manual to tech, so that you don't have what Georgia mentioned. You have a small lag, and you immediately go back to what you have. Because in your mind, you've not really adopted the new tech. You've just adopted it by downloading a new software. You have a bigger laptop, and your boss has told you if you don't use that software, you're probably going to be fired, and he's going to hire a 5-year-old. So you need to have people understand why you have this. And when you understand why, you have policies that shape that. That's where the government, again, is a huge player in this. You have policies that shape that, policies that will define what technology will be needed for. I think I've gone overboard with my time on that, but that was sort of my training.
No, that was great. It's just because I as a sector, we are sector leaders here. I mean, and everyone out here, the people that are attending, if you will, we want you to be asking, the government, hey, what are we going to do about this? Okay, like, what are we going to do about this? And we know people in government. We interact with people and the leaders. What are we going to do about this? And she said it aptly. It's more prop tech is more than, getting more WhatsApp, people in your WhatsApp. Woo, now I'm prop tech. No. Oh, I just sent a client a picture. Woo, that's me in prop tech. No. Okay. that's not why. That's not it. So I think we're scratching the surface on some opportunities here. So I used to, Alex, I used to have a real estate firm, and we were kind of a boutique real estate firm. And this was 5 or so years ago. And everyone, I was so committed to being a paperless company. So we're a paperless company. We did nothing. We had no paper anywhere. You would not come in our office and find files of paper anywhere. Everything was digital from end to end. And we brought in 360 walkthroughs of all of our spaces, so you don't have to go on site. We could give you a 360 view of that property. And you also could track the status of your sale or your rental. So a client could look to see where his or her sale stands. She would have her own portal that he or she would log in and be able to see the status of that property. And all of our agents could do the same. They could see where their payment is. And so they knew what to tell their client. They weren't out there wondering and floundering. I don't know what to tell my client. And I'm saying this to say, Alex, and you've in terms of processes, right? And so the way that people do their jobs and in their interaction, you've created something with Fundis that's kind of like the Uber, if you will, of the built environment. And for Fundis specifically, what other places or spaces do you see that such technology can be expanded? And Are people moving from, so that's two questions for you, Alex. Are people moving from, hey, I know a guy, right? Because everybody has their personal guy.
Yeah.
To, wait a minute, let me look here and see if I can get the best for the best rate. And it might not be my guy.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Robin. And I love what both George and Jonah are saying, because beginning of this year, as a company Fundis, we are coming off from an actual government accelerator that is spearheaded by the Ministry of ICT, Youth and Innovations. And it was about 20 of us trying to think, we are newcomers into this space, because particularly for me, my background is in law. And I remember the painstaking hours we would spend at the land registry and other places on behalf of clients. But then coming off that process, and I must mention, in fact, Robin, we are using your book with Emma Building in Kenya, where we have thought through the excellent work that you've done in terms of giving us a really good outset of the entire commercial real estate development process. And what we've done, we have actually segmented about 6 segments in that entire process. And mind you, in every one of those segments, we have a tech startup that's trying to build something big time. But then we cannot be able to work in silos, like George said. That's already happening, and that has been happening for a very long time. So for instance, if you were to think of it from a decision-making perspective, from sourcing professionals, from physical plan submission, from sales and marketing, from the financial bit, there is a likelihood that somebody will want to use technology to change things as we have known them. And the interesting part for us is that we have realized that technology is not the end in itself. In fact, our approach is that we see technology as an enabler. So what we are doing is that we are thinking through each one of those places, whether it's a developer or a client who is thinking about making decisions and tools they need to make decisions, or somebody, so for instance, what George has mentioned when it comes to every county trying to build something around how do we get these physical plans and that kind of thing. So where we are at right now, our opinion is that we are literally seated on a rocket that's about to launch. And I'm saying this because what we see every single spaces in the entire commercial real estate development process, all the way from ideation or conceptualization, all the way to design, is opportunities, 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 and opportunities towards meeting real needs. So our excitement right now, and for me, I'm coming off from another company that we started about 5 years ago and failed publicly, where we were trying to position ourselves as a complete automated labor subcontractor for construction companies. And that was a massive headache by the time we closed it down. But then using that experience, we came up with Fundis. Our idea now has been, it takes a village to raise a child. So we are talking to every single person who is within this space. So every one of those segments, so we are working with somebody there, and we are working collaboratively to be able to think. You are in the decision-making space trying to help clients and developers to be able to make decisions. We are in the space where we are helping all types of people to find all types of professionals. Now, you'll be talking about, you're thinking about architects, you're thinking about QSs, you're thinking about mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, you're thinking about the labor aspect, the fundis, the plumbers, the carpenters. Our idea has been, let's make this process really, really, really easy for everybody. So ultimately, Robin, for us, it's about needs. It's about meeting real needs for real people in every one of those segments. And we think that's gonna keep growing in the next 5 years, as I had indicated earlier.
Wonderful, great, thank you, Alex. So George, I want to hear from you. What's exciting you in PropTech now? What do you see now that's exciting you that you're like, yeah, oh yeah? What do you see? Or what are you utilizing that excites you right now? Either way, something like that.
Let me just mention that I have had interest in technology since I first touched my first computer, like in '94. Okay, I just joined high school, and I saw a computer for the first time, and I got hooked. So I actually did a diploma in computer studies before I did architecture. And
Oh, nice.
so I've really been this person who wants to see technology being used. Never mind this whole mantra of, you know, we have now sold our privacy, all our information anyone can hack or find or download. It doesn't really matter, because the next big issue about technology, which is already happening, is the issue of security, and people are working around it to make sure that information is safe. One way or another, the only way you can be safe completely is unplugging yourself, and then you will not be knowledgeable. What excites me in the design aspects and basically the construction is I am looking, and I agree with Alex, that the adoption is such that everyone at some stage has his bit they have an understanding. In fact, if you look at how we used to use computers in design, for some time, the real estate industry and the design industry was based on 3D renders for marketing purposes, visualization. You know, go and do for me a 3D, you get a photorealistic image. People are now moving away from that to, is that image, can we implement that image? Can I get the exact thing I'm seeing on that image? And that for me is what is exactly, because the developers themselves are asking for that. If I give a developer today a very good render, and they come to site and they don't see what they saw in the render, they'll start asking questions. In fact, I'm actually asking developers, if someone gives you a render and they don't deliver that render, you can sue them, because that was they lied to you. So how do we develop that then? We need to have that value chain connected all the way. And in fact, when it comes to technology, it is a major cost savings, and that can be transferred to the developer. Once people realize that, I think maybe June could confirm this, but from the various studies that have been done in the UK on BIM, savings on construction projects have been as much as 20%, just because the information is clear and it's on time and it's efficient. Some contractors have even gone to a point where they set up offices that are highly technologically capable on site, such that I am in my office and I'm designing and I'm able to send real-time information to the developers, to the builders on site. They can print out the information, or they can project a detail which I'm working on, or they can query something. This is the kind of thing that for me excites me. The other thing that I can say excites me is how students are adopting it. You know, I used to do part-time lecturing. I went to JQuat. The students were presenting a project, and one student actually had a virtual reality kit. As part of his presentation, he had a fantastic printouts, but then he had this kit you could put on, and then wow, voila, you're transformed into his imagination about what he was dreaming about. For me, I think the excitement within the individual people, particularly the private sector, is there. Now the government needs to come in and say, you know what, we are going to have the registry online, and you have no choice. If you want, the same way they're pushing us with this e-citizen, you will not get services. If you don't get to Duma card, you will not get this and that. We can do the same with this technology, and we will all be very excited to do it. Yeah. Thank you, Robbie.
Awesome. Very exciting. You know, you guys are getting me excited. So George, you've kind of put yourself out there with a little bit of a hint of your age. So you say 94. Okay. So I had my first, if anybody knows what this thing is, you might have to Google it. I had my first Atari. See, I don't know if anybody, I can see people roll their head. In 79 or 80. And I remember my dad brought home our first microwave, which was the size of the whole counter. It was probably like the first microwave we had was probably about the size of right here, the whole counter. And you know how they come down so much. I guess it's the evolution of technology, probably in the early 80s. And I'm telling you, George, I'm just like you. I am hooked on technology and innovation. I've always been and just in love with it. And even so, as I talk about things that I'm what we have tried to do, even in the business I talked about, we try to bring VR, like can we do some kind of vector, if you will, an illustration, either for communities or people that are buying in communities, that if we mapped on planning approvals, could we see how that community will change in a VR way? And can a resident who's looking to buy, can they look around in the VR and see the change that will be there? Will it always look this way? And so we tried to do that. We did a lot to try to do. We weren't able to pull it off, and but I think with this Artie Sasa, that might be part of it, because what we didn't have is a management information system that brought that technology to every space. But if we could lay that on top of it, and a person could come and virtually look and see what will Kilimani look like in 5 years if all of these approvals came in. Now that would be dope. June. June, now we've talked about BIM. I don't want to step over and make any assumptions here that everybody's on the same understanding of BIM. Maybe you can just give us a brief minute or so of what that is, and what do you see as the uptake of it here? And what would you like for us to do? If you had the magic wand for BIMing, what would you say?
Okay, so BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and essentially it is the consolidation of all the information that is in the construction process. That is from strategizing, that is, I have an idea to put up a mall, to the demolition of that mall. So digitizing all that information and using it amply to improve that entire process. Typically, most people who have had BIM tend to think Revit, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD. I'm like, those are not BIM, those are softwares. They do help in BIM implementation, but just a small bit of it. Most of it is a lot of information management, it said. BIM in Kenya, wow. When I came back, I had such a big vision. I was just like, I wish I had that one. I was like, fill it up. But for me, I think there's been, over the last 1 year, because I've been working as a consultant, helping companies transition from, manual ways to digital, do that digital transformation in either their design and upskilling on everything. And I've seen like a really huge uptick in that, especially in the software side. There's still a lot to be done in the people and organizational and leadership change. What I'd mentioned earlier in terms of understanding the why, understanding how we're going to implement this, understanding how BIM has effectively, or how the processes of using digital information and the knowledge that comes from that digital information to improve process, how is that used, how is that going to improve our processes. If I had a BIM wand, I think I would first use it on our government. We need policies. So one of the biggest hindrances, I think, to BIM in Kenya right now is even those people who are very aggressive in applying BIM are still very much experimenting on what level of BIM should I be using on this? What level of design? You have to collaborate with the architect to decide how are we going to do this. The client does not necessarily know a lot about BIM, so he's relying on his project manager. The project manager is also learning about BIM, and they don't know what is going to govern what design goes where. So if we had our government involved in this, they would set out policies, like we have policies for building, we have policies for BIM. This is what is required for something like this. This is what is required for hospitals. What is required down to the nitty-gritties of even technical designs of level of information, level of design, everything. So I think policies will help that a lot. So that would be the first BIM one. The second one, I'd use it to educate major developers outside of the government, private developers. A lot of private developers are, they have their ear on the ground and they're like, yeah, I'm hearing this new thing called BIM. I'd want to see how it's done. And if you meet somebody who's a contractor or a planning team or anything who's not very vast in BIM, that BIM version could be anything. They could be like, yeah, we know BIM. We'll use Revit on your project. We know BIM. we will do this and this. So there's a lot of client education that needs to be done on what BIM is and what BIM is for the client, because a lot of BIM for the client is seen as in the construction phase. Like I've said, the construction phase is not the entire project. Project starts from when you think I'm going to put up a mall to when you demolish it. That's the length of the project. And for the client, you're going to be there throughout all of those projects. Maybe not the demolition part, you never know. But BIM will also be used in strategizing. BIM will also be used post-construction. How will it benefit you like that? So there's a lot of client education that needs to be done. That's my second one. I could go on forever, but I think I'm going to leave on those two for now. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. We can see some use of some beam wands. So I think as you talked about, and thank you, Alex, for mentioning the book. One of the things we do talk about is that it is that conceptualization. That's where development starts, as you said. It's not just in the construction part of it, if you will. And so I love the part of, it's beam is from the beginning, if you will, to the demolition. And so, I was watching a video or something another where they were showing inside of this beam part, I'm surmising, that if you track every tool particle in the building, that when you come down to demolition, you can demolish in a methodical way, perhaps, and then thinking about how it might be reused. But you have a sense of what's there, right? Somebody's been tracking what is there, what's in that building, what are some potential afterlife uses of what's in that building, and so forth. I'm just surmising and making that up. Let's see here, Alex. So I just want to come back to everyone. Now, listen, we're talking a lot about the supply side, but each and every one of us here know some people that have been looking for houses, if you will, looking in the market. The people are ourselves that are looking to find out, make comparisons so they can make good investments, if you will. And so, I'm just curious from your take, if we can come back and look at this from the other side. We know that Vibrant Kenya is one of those places is a trusted place where people can go and look and identify. But what do you see, Alex, if you look at, because I love what you said about technology solving a problem, right? Technology being here for solving a problem, not just to show off how fancy we can code and so forth and so on. But the whole premise of it is to first identify the problem and what are you going to be out there to solve. So, Alex, what do you see on the demand side that's not being fully brought out, if you will, with the use of technology? What do you see are some missed opportunities?
Right. Thanks, Robin, and just even just looping from the conversation that you were just having with June as well. For me, it's the need to have a sort of a mechanism where at every single stage, decisions are being data backed, right? So every single thing becomes very intentional. But from a demand perspective, what I think is a really, really, really huge gap. And I have had this saying for some time that the first line of code should not be written before an actual customer is in the room. And I think that for me is so important, because what's happening is ultimately before we build any single piece of software, from a demand perspective, there needs to be a really good customer discovery process. So from a demand side, and if you are to think of it from every one of those segments of the process I was mentioning, the biggest challenge I have been seeing is products being developed with little to no knowledge around what customers are looking for. Now, for instance, you mentioned Vibrant Kenya, and shout out to Vibrant Kenya. They're doing an impressive job around, house hunting, whether it's for buying or for rental. But if you think around what we have seen is other sorts of solutions growing from that same perspective. There is a lot of work that needs to go in terms of just talking to, customers, talking to people who are hunting, people who are looking either to buy land, whether it's to develop, and all that process. There's an intentional process that is missing around finding a mechanism in terms of communication, in terms of collecting the data, and in terms of now going back in your silos and developing a product and bringing it back in front of an actual customer and asking them, hey, what do you think about this? Because now at that particular point is where we can now start improving that particular process that, hey, it does this, but it needs to be improved to also do this and the other. So for me, I think it's just a lot of intentionality around having data-backed decision. And it's not just at that particular demand side. It also goes all the way to whether it's the financial space. At the back of every project, there's somebody who wants to make a return out of it. It goes all the way to supply. Once you've done work with your architect at some point and with your QS, there's the whole aspect. You also need sorts of materials to go alongside your project. But then that process of how do we collect real-time actual data that then we can use to back decisions, and decisions that eventually make products that are intended to be put out there in the market. So it still goes back to me that basically technology is an enabler. Technology is not the solution. Technology is an enabler to enable whatever product that you want to bring to the market. On one side, to be able to collect the needs, the actual needs, talk to actual people, understand their needs, then go back to develop it. So for me, I think that space for data-backed products, data-backed decision is still the gap that I see in all of the major segments of that process.
Mm-hmm. Really great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. And panel, I don't think that we can avoid all roads leading back to government with everything that's being said. Sorry, Kaba, we tried. But all roads are leading back, because when he talks about this data-backed, now who's the purveyor of the data? Who's the purveyor of the most data that's out there? So KRA knows who's transacting houses, right? Who's transacting sales. Why aren't they putting out a monthly report, a financial report? Haas Consult has made such an investment to go out and get that information. And that's just information people will tell them how much it was sold for, how much, and so forth and so on. That's not the actual fact-based information about, how much was paid based on taxes and so forth. So, even what they're doing, and they're doing yeoman's work to pull that information together. Let's say even Byron Ken, they're able to put on there what a property listed for, but they don't have the actual data for how much it's sold or and so forth. And the only way we can get that data-based information going is the government has to, one, be interested in collecting it. It's because data is one thing, but then if it's not translated to useful information, it's of no good. So I want to just invite people to put, hopefully throughout this conversation, you put in some questions that you might have here, and we'll come to them, get them in. But team, just one last question. I think for me, it's a couple of questions, and you can choose from where you want to respond. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Cecil. I'm just taking a quick moment in the questions to see if there's anything out there. Okay, so let's say we're having a hackathon tomorrow. Okay, we're having a prop tech hackathon tomorrow. Oh, maybe it's not tomorrow because it takes some time to prepare it. But we've decided that we're going to do one. What would you want to hack? What would you want to hack? So again, it's hackathon as we see, it's basically looking at problem, bringing a diverse group of people together for a concentrated period of time so that we could, look at society challenges here. They're complex. people that have different perspectives. And then we're also bringing technology people into the room. And we, go somewhere and we have a 3 or 4 day hackathon. And we come out with 20, I don't know, top interventions. What's one that you would, and you're putting together a team yourself, okay? You are pulling a team together yourself individually. What would you want to take a shot at?
Sorry, Robin, I lost you there, but I think, did you ask me to say something?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm asking.
I had you. I had you. Well, first, let me.
Sorry.
Yes, I did. I did hear your question.
Okay.
Let me go back to what you mentioned in passing. It was quite loaded, despite the fact that it was in passing. Let me again. I'm just saying something else I do. It's informal. I have this sort of informal forum. We call it Dream Cities, and we've been on since 2007. But we haven't moved. Again, going back to that point that we don't have the government's what I would call goodwill or the authorities. The concept you talked about, just having a future look at what is coming is so powerful to an extent that it is actually possible, even with the meager resources we have, as long as the various government bodies and local authorities and developers are willing to do it. So if you look at the development control space, all the projects that are in the county are actually proposals. That's why even when you are given a drawing, it's written proposed residential housing, proposed office building, proposed this and that. So the question would be, what you're saying is, if it was put in the public eye, one, for visualization, just to marvel at what the plans are, and also for purposes of getting people to interrogate them, so that if they have an issue, it is not just plans being sent. A lot of people might not be able to understand plans, but when they see a visual representation of a project in context, it makes a lot of sense. We already have like some really good data. I would say, if you look at, for example, the statistics on which are going to be the next big cities in the world, I think all top 5 are in Africa. Dar es Salaam, Kinshasa, Nairobi, Addis. All these are going to be like the biggest cities by population. So what does that mean? What we are looking at, we have data that we are not using until when it's too late. In the real estate space, all this means more buildings, probably taller buildings. But where are these buildings going to be built? They're not going to be built in some land that's coming from outside. The land is there and it's finite. The problem is we are not visualizing it to a point where we are interrogating it. So if you ask me what kind of a hackathon I would be very happy to lead, would be to put every person who is involved, from the land registry to the planning approval office, to the designers, to the developers, to the people who are looking for property, to that immigrant who's moving from the rural areas, coming to the urban areas to look for housing and work. Put them in a room and project for them this picture of Nairobi in 5 years, okay? And then show them this is what's going to happen. Then someone can choose, am I going to live on the 90th floor of an apartment building, or am I going to live in a basement, or am I going to live in a filthy back neighborhood because it's cheaper? And then at that point, you are able to make decisions on what we need to do. Because right now, it is all driven from individual developers pushing against all odds to make sure that they bring their property to the market and sell them to the right market to make the right profits. But the reality of the matter is that even if you build today in Kilimani or you build today in Runda, you don't know what the neighbor who's buying a property is going to do. I was in Kirichwa the other day, Nyeri Road, and as we were looking at some apartment that was coming up, I think it's like a 24-story apartment coming up. An old gentleman, a retired civil servant, just walked out of his house and started asking us whether we were the consultants. And we told him, no, we were just looking. And he said, look what these guys have done to my house. I can't even sit on my backyard. I can't even sit here. Why? Because all the opening windows are opening into his backyard. And of course, he couldn't know this was coming up until the building was already built. So if we were able to all have this information, which we claim to be in an information age, where we know every little bit that's happening in various people's houses and bedrooms, really, we should have enough information to make investment decisions, particularly in real estate, which is most of the time is the biggest investment most individuals make, with very, very little information. So I think that hackathon really needs to go to that level where we visualize, and that visualization must be information that's already the big data we have. We just need to crunch it and channel it to the right place. I think we lost Robin. Maybe my fellow panelists can take over.
Yeah, I think she dropped out for a second, but I think the question was posed to all of us, so I'll just continue from there. Just to recap, I think the question was if you have a hackathon and what something that would come up with. So I think Alex and also Robin had mentioned this. It's a perfect opportunity that I've been seeing in the built industry. Oh, she's back. Built industry and real estate industry. So it's that's big data. I think that is something that has been going around us. Seeing that this webinar has been made possible by Byron Kenya and Building in Kenya, I think it's appropriate to mention how big data can be used by platforms like Byron Kenya and Building in Kenya to really leverage on their businesses. So some of the things that I personally do in this hackathon is probably big data management. There is so much information in the world that is used for our advantage and sometimes to our disadvantage, because I mean that's the kind of world we're using. But hopefully we'll get to a point where there's data security. But big data in this case can be used not only just to have show people houses that they search for. For example, Byron Kenya, I'll go typing, I'm looking for 3-bedroom in Kilimani. It will probably just show me 3 bedrooms in Kilimani. That's it. No. But with proper big data management, you could show me way more than that. You could show me a building that is perhaps, because you know me now, you have my data, you have my information. You could show me buildings that are next to my yoga studio, close to where I work, close to where I eat, close to where I do this. You could even not show me 3 bedrooms at all, because you understand that maybe I'm just getting a 3-bedroom. Just because you could show me a 2-bedroom that has space better distributed than a 3-bedroom with smaller rooms, or 2 bedrooms that are self-contained. That's the kind of opportunity that we're missing out by not tapping into big data. We're also missing out on opportunities for property managers to develop. A good example is of previous data, big data used for property management is probably, what's this word? When people move to a poorer estate and then it develops. I'm looking for the. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, George, you're saying it. I think you've got it.
Gentrification.
Yes, gentrification. Oh. Gentrification is one of those things that people start noticing. Guys are starting to put up a yoga studio up next to Siju, this Kadinji corner. Somebody has opened a yoga center there. So this place is up and coming. Then all of a sudden you see real estate developers grab that place and go on ahead. This is something that you can notice from picking up trends. It's not necessarily from people typing in, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom. It's just from noticing how generally people are moving around in that area, or how people are moving away from that area. For example, like people are drastically moving away from Nairobi. So possibly as a developer, is it the best idea to put up a 70-story residential building in Kilimani at the moment? No. People are drastically moving away from Nairobi. We are immediately becoming decentralized. Everything is going online. People can work from anywhere. Leafy is coming out really fast. That's what I would do with my hacker. Tap into big data and see how you can leverage it in the construction industry.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and Alex, what would your hackathon, what would your proposal, project, problem be?
Right. I think mine would almost overlap with George's, because I think When I look at trends around the magic that we have seen in other sectors, pick for instance insurance, pick for instance fintech, pick for instance health tech, the magic has happened where the veterans got into the same room with the newbies. So for me, I would be doing a hackathon around a sandbox that brings every who is who in that space in one place, and we think together. Because I think when you think of the triggers of the world in their places, you know, in agriculture and many other places, I think it's about time for prop tech. Because I think basically when I look at the veterans who have been in the industry, they will tell you of what doesn't work and what could never work in 1,000 years. But when I look at the excitement and the zeal and enthusiasm that the newbies are bringing into that space, they have no fear of bogeymen. So for me to be a sandbox for prop tech, it needs to happen because that will be the byproduct of lots of guys approaching the same problem from many-sided approaches, and it may give some sort of magic that we have seen in every other single sector. So I think I would be building a sandbox.
Wonderful. So as we're wrapping up, I think we're going to come to a close. Somebody has asked the question: is there a way that private sector can accelerate the government's up technology? I want to throw this question out to all of us, as we're closing up here. I started the conversation with some cursory statistics, if you will. 40% of buyers start the home buying process by looking online. 92% of buyers use the internet. And we know that we are in KOT. We know Kenyans are on technology. So what would you tell venture capitalists that have not given the type of impetus, money towards our sector? What's the yin and yang there? Have we not gone out and put the viability before venture capitalists to get more money here so that we can do more of this? And it's kind of to that private sector, is government's not going to do, or are we, for some reason, venture capitalists overlooking our sector? As you close up, want to hear your thoughts. Thinking practically here.
Well, if I could go first, because technically Fundis we are venture backed, but then we are coming into that space from completely an outside perspective. I think if every one of us were to put their money on anything, the basic idea is around, give me a good story around return. And what I'm looking at in 5 years, 10 years, will I get 10 times what I put in, 20 times what I put in? I think it's happening, but we need to sort of do a lot of appetizing, lots of drawing them in. Venture VCs that are putting big monies in other spaces. It will be exciting to get to a point maybe in a year or two where we see VCs whose investment portfolios is that they say we only look at prop tech products or prop tech players. And I think eventually we may get there, but then it's a lot of learning from the other sectors and domesticating that in this space.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
So I've had a bit of interaction with VCs, and I'm also looking into going into that for the construction industry. And yes, there's a bit of lag in investment in prop tech, quant tech, generally the building sector. And VCs are looking, they're investors, they're looking to grow their money as fast as possible. That is their key objective. And that tends to be in opportunities that grow fast, take fast. And we all know that the built environment and adopting technology is not exactly the fastest. You want to turn in your money in the next 7 years. How are you going to convince this VC in an industry that has been in existence for as long as mankind that we are the last ones to adopt technology? How are you going to convince them that your technology or your application is somehow going to change the real estate industry in the last 7 years, that the last thousands of years we're still struggling? So there's that aspect of rapid scaling that is required in real estate, and it's really what Alex was mentioning, really having those, capturing that clientele, capturing that initial market, capturing it big. So like your former venture, Alex, you mentioned about trying to go with a contractor way. That was it's a bit slow. There's a bit of a slow adoption when it comes to consultants in the industry. But however, what if you go to the consumer side? I'm looking for fundi, and if all my contacts don't have connections, an app will work. And eventually that is more likely to pick up faster. And so there's that promise in the VC's eye. It's going to scale faster than trying to convince every contractor to pick up on your service. And I think the other thing is what they will get out of it. So real estate is probably seen as one of the most promising industries, also seen as one of the most shaky ones, having caused, I think, two depressions in the world. So there's also that risk factor we see. But as we are heading more into the technology sector, I think we're reducing that risk factor and not just seeing real estate as this impermeable bubble, but seeing it more as an investment opportunity that has its risks, just as any other venture that you might want to go through. Yeah, so I think that's how we can direct VCs there. Just show scalability. Most of the time it's return on investment. The story about digitizing the sector is lovely, but it's lovely to us who are in the industry. For them is money, money, money. And that's right. That's justified. That is their part. That's their role in this agreement. Yeah, that's all I can say on that.
Robin, if I may chime in.
See my, yes.
Okay. Yeah, for me, the second best bet after government, if government is not like really slow as it is, would be the developers and the funders of projects. I wouldn't even look at the consultants, because the consultants get instructions from the developers. And as June said earlier about data management, this idea of technology in real estate is fully, if you think about it, is about beneficial to the developer, because the developer is able to get control of information and tracking the process such that they are able to see with ease where they are putting their money, where their money is going. And as usual in Kenya, if you are able to follow the money, to track the money, even in the construction process, everything is fine, because the process of construction is so contrived with so many people, so many parties, and so many processes, that if a developer does not follow the money and focus on where it's going and how it's being utilized, they will not be able to see any useful gains at the end. So if developers themselves go to the team and say, I want to know what's going on, I want the program to be giving me updates on what's going on, I don't even want to move from my desk. I mean, in this time and age, I have not had a physical meeting for other than a site meeting for the whole of 2020 and half of 2021. And projects have gone on. We actually started a construction project in March of 2020. It's been handed over and tenants have moved in this year. And we have only had 2 physical meetings with the client who's based in the UK. So the client themselves push, I want this information and I want you to do in this platform. And I don't care how complicated the platform is. I just want my update. It might be as simple as crunching all the big data, analyzing it, and just sending him a weekly email on what's going on. If that is the brief, I am very sure the consultants have no choice. They will adopt the technology. Robin?
Great. Yes, I can hear you. So I get you completely. So there is so listen, I think what I'm taking away from this today is this is, all of us have a role to play in this. And there's so much great opportunity in this. And listen, we didn't even begin to touch on technology, even for like home management or right, the smart home. We didn't even touch on this. I think we could hold a whole series just on this topic itself because there's so much about it. But I think that what we are really saying, and this is what in my dreaming days, guys, I want to see that hackathon. I want to see these leading organizations coming together and bringing all of us together and say, get in that room and let's start chunking out fundable projects, right? Fundable projects that can be proven to go taken to scale. But we can't just sit together in different silos and lament about it not being there any longer. I think we can't do that any longer. We need to actually come together in rooms, put our thinking caps together, throw some ideas up on the wall and see if they stick and see if we can get some funders to go at them. That's where the fun is, if you will, also. There's great fun in that also. And so I'm calling on Vibrant Kenya and Building in Kenya to pull us together and let us have this hackathon and let us get in there and ideate, right? Let's ideate together and let's come in and come up with some solutions. Listen, Kenya is, we talk about also mature markets. This is another part of mature markets, if you will, in our sector. This is another part of mature markets, and Kenya is prime for the enhanced maturation. So I just want to, again, thank this panel. This has been such a delight. Alex, George, and June, thank you so much for this discussion. And I just hope that we continue to share ideas on whatever platforms that we have. And guys, until we have that hackathon, hopefully you guys are writing op-ed pieces together. Hopefully we are, right? We're calling on, government to go and do demonstrations to them. We just take over P.S. Hinga's office and just lay out on his board table demonstrations. We'll be here monthly, Hinga, until you get it. Right? This is what it takes. That's exactly what the conservation sector does. They're bold and aggressive about, listen, I know this will hack it. So thank you, Vibrant Kenya team. Thank you, Building in Kenya team. Thank you, everyone that has joined this discussion today. Please go out and hack something today. Please go out and find a new solution and get 5 or 4 people to take it up and practice. That scalability right there from 1 to 5. And then 5 to 100, just go and have fun with it. Innovation and technology is all around us, the opportunity for it. So I think that brings us to a conclusion of our webinar today. Thank you again, and everyone stay safe, be well, and look for more webinars on the Vibrant Kenya and the Building in Kenya platforms. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
All right, thank you.